So mute yourself. Hello everyone, and well, yes, now it should work. Just 1 second, I will ask everyone to mute. Oh well, it's actually me. Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome to our office hour for Terraform AWS modules. Today we have our first episode of this thing, and what it actually means for us is that we have few people already joining us on Zoom. We'll see them shortly. For everyone who is watching this on YouTube or other platform like Twitch, Periscope, and maybe somewhere else, this is a place where we can talk about things related to Terraform AWS modules, which we maintain and which we support. So without any further delay, let me switch to Zoom, and I will try to keep it there.
Hey.
Just, well,
hey, Brian.
Yes, just 1 second. Some people watch it on Zoom, some people on YouTube. It's a little bit confusing even for me, believe me. Here we are. So now all of us can say. Okay, so I'm gonna to send link to people involved. Okay, so here is what we have. We have, well, where is it? Here is it. Yes. So let's take it from.
Can't really hear you, Anton.
Well, if I unmute myself in Zoom, then you cannot hear me in YouTube. You know. So can you go to YouTube and see there? Okay, so the first thing which I want to bring is related to, once more, to schedule chat here. Yeah. Okay, guys, feel free to unmute yourself and say something. Check on YouTube. Ernest, since I have already you on Zoom, can you introduce yourself and tell just a few things before we go further? You are on mute right now, but if you unmute yourself.
Yeah, okay, good. You do it now? Okay. Yeah. Hi. I'm Cherno. I'm Cherno, and I'm a cloud. Sorry, excuse me. It's because it's a bit weird because I don't hear myself in Zoom, and I have the YouTube video, and I have some bit delay. Yeah, it's quite confusing. Yeah.
Well, that's too bad.
Okay. So I'm Cherno, and I'm a cloud architect for Polyconseil. It's a technical enterprise who try to build electrical car sharing solutions. And there we have a large platform on Kubernetes, and we do also a lot of AWS. So that's it.
Cool. Yeah, I know that it's very confusing. So let me share this link with everyone. So Tiarna, can you join this link, please? Yeah, it's a bit too hard to make it work. And honestly, my software just updated 5 minutes. That's why I don't have even background. I don't know if it's gonna to work, but let's try.
So it's connecting.
Okay. So if so is it connecting still? Does it work? Tierna. Can you guys join this?
Supposed to click this eCam link?
You should be, I don't know, if you click on that link, you should pop up inside of, well, no, it's, well, apparently it's not gonna to work for some reasons related to the software update. Yeah, I'm still connecting. I can see that, but there is no progress on that. Okay, let's put it another way. Let's just use Zoom for now, and we'll figure out how to do this better with streaming, because I don't know why, but it just doesn't work. Okay. Unfortunately. So if I unmute myself here, you can hear me, right? Let's.
Yep.
Okay, and I believe that people can also hear me on stream too. So let's hope that this is gonna to work. Apologize that it's so confusing this time. So okay, let's like reset everything what was before. And so hello everyone, welcome to our first Terraform AWS modules office hours, where we are maintainers of Terraform AWS modules, and we want to make this process a little bit more transparent and answer a few questions. So the agenda for today is already written in description to this video, and I'm sure that most of us already know what is it about, right? So pretty much everyone is aware about it except me, because I cannot find it. Well, it was here, right? Okay, here is it. So the agenda is still the same. So first, let's talk about things related to offload and linting, pre-commit, running from pull requests, and this is we'll hear from Bryant. And then we'll talk about something related to git-chglog, and this is that project and how can we replace it. Then we will talk about Terraform 0.13 features and whether we can use them in our projects, and should we abandon Terraform 0.11 completely? Hopefully yes. And then there will be a Q&A from people who watch this live, and feel free to write your questions on YouTube, and I will try to highlight them here. So the first thing, let's talk about offloading, linting, and pre-commit. So Brian, can you unmute yourself and explain to everyone what is it about. We talked about this, I guess, about 3 weeks ago.
Yep. Yeah, so what we're trying to do is kind of more akin to the traditional software development lifecycle that you see in other open source repositories, where when you come across a project, here we're talking about the modules. You want to implement a change, a fix. You open up a pull request. We want to start being able to quickly give back feedback to the users that are opening pull requests. So we have a number of tools at our disposal that will help us with some things, not all the things. Testing of Terraform changes, obviously, by its nature, is a little bit tricky and harder because it needs to spin up resources. But the initial implementation would be to try to check the min-max versions of the Terraform version constraint that is provided in the module, and then run through a series of checks, doing things like initializing Terraform in the module repo, running the format checks to see if there's any formatting that hasn't been run on the code base for that module, running the validate check, and those are provided by the Terraform CLI. And then we have a number of third-party tools. So there's tflint. We have the pre-commit hooks that Anton helps maintain. So we're trying to wrap a lot of those early static checks, as they're kind of called, into the project, so that when users open pull requests, we can go through a lot of these very easy sanity checks, so that by the time when we come across the pull request, we'll still have to look at checking that branch out and doing a plan and apply to fully validate it. But a lot of those early checks start to be offloaded, and so that users can get very early feedback to simple common problems.
Yeah, that's pretty much the premise for all of this. I want to kind of mention that there are a couple improvements to pre-commit hooks which are related, which I added recently. So first of all, it's Terraform tflint, which I added to a few modules, and it's actually working quite nicely. It verifies all modules and submodules inside of a few repositories. And this week I also fixed Terraform validate, which now works also quite okay. It's extremely slow. It's like 2-3 seconds per module. I don't know why. So it's like if we have, I don't know, 10 submodules, you can calculate how long time will it take extra when you do commit. But overall, yes, pre-commit is there. Okay, so do you have any things which you want to show or share how it works?
Yeah, am I able to share through Zoom here, or?
Yeah, you should be able.
Let's share this out. All right, so you able to see my screen?
Yes.
All right, so what I created, I went through several iterations. Kind of started out with solutions that were way too complex. The initial idea was, because we do have some sub-modules and they themselves have version constraints, trying to deduce what the overall boundary scope is. But the more simplistic approach actually didn't come to me until late last night, when I quickly put together this final solution, which works pretty well. But there are some edge cases, and that would be if one of our submodules, kind of like the RDS module, has the RDS instance submodule. If it has one version constraint, but the root of the module has a different version constraint, this implementation just looks at the root version constraint. So I don't know how Terraform itself handles that. I'm sure it's parsing the syntax tree and coming up with the overall min-max bounds. But regardless, this is I think a pretty good starting point, simple solution. So I just called this GitHub action Terraform min-max, and the way that it works is it actually goes through the project that you're using. You can set where the root directory is. So if you have a mono repo of modules, or just a single root, wherever you want to evaluate what the Terraform required version constraints are. You can set that directory, and then it will spit out the evaluated min and max versions. And so what it's doing is it's evaluating that version constraint against semantic versioning package provided by a node. And then it's comparing that against the list of releases that HashiCorp publishes. They've got a nice API endpoint that lists all those, even the alpha and beta ones. And then that will spit that out. So it'll look at the constraint and then give you back the min and max versions for Terraform. So if you look at this in a kind of complete GitHub action workflow, we check out the code base to get the source files. We evaluate it. So here, I do have this test directory here with the constraint that puts the min and max versions that are evaluated. And then in the subsequent job, I reference that in a matrix so that I can run my checks across both the minimum version that this module should be satisfying, as well as the maximum version that it's satisfying. And again, this workflow just checks out the code base, uses the HashiCorp setup Terraform. It's a pretty good action where it'll install the Terraform CLI and wrap the output for you, and then just start running through your different validations. So that's kind of the piece that was new or missing. I do have a module that I recently created. So this is creating Lambda forwarders for Datadog. If you use those to ship logs off to Datadog for your Lambda functions. And here, it actually caught a mistake that I did where I was saying everything from like 12.26, 12.26 all the way up to 13.5. But I was actually using the newer 0.13 syntax where I'm using a depends on for module dependencies. And obviously that's not in 12 unless you set that feature flag. So this actually, it works pretty well in that it pulled up the min-max 0.12.26 to 0.13.5, installed Terraform, did the initialization. You can see that it failed here. It caught the
where did you define
that we want to check?
Sorry, where did you define the versions you want to use it? I didn't quite understand.
So it's pulling it from the module. So if we look at this is kind of like a module, right? And in here, I've defined it in the versions.tf. Kind of that's been the standard I think we've been doing in the modules. But it doesn't matter which Terraform file. It'll actually look through all of the, it's kind of like a file glob pattern looking for anything star.tf. But it's trying to find in this Terraform block the required version. Sorry, not the provider. The required version. So here it's saying anything greater than or equal to 0.12.26, which it did pick up that 12.26 was valid, and anything less than 0.14. One thing I didn't go back and check, I don't know what the current release is, but I think it picked up 0.13.5, which that in theory should be the latest release.
So and will it verify against which exactly versions?
Yes. Yeah. So it's actually, that's what I was saying. So if we look at the source code here, so it's actually reaching out to this endpoint that HashiCorp has that has all of these versions. So that's how the kind of like version check works. There's two parts. There's the semantic version itself, which evaluates the version constraint. If I go back, this is what's referred to as the version constraint. So that tells you your pattern that you can match against. And then the other thing that you have to do in conjunction with that is give it the versions that are actually available. And so it'll take those two pieces and evaluate and say, okay, this is the minimum version of the release or list of versions, and this is the maximum version, and that's what it provides back.
Right.
So you don't have to manually type in and keep updating your GitHub action workflow for the min and max, provided you keep this current. it's meant to just work within the workflow
Yep.
and catch anything where if you add a new feature that is not in 12.26, that will fail. And that's what it did for my check here. I was using a feature that's for 0.13, and so it failed. It caught that for me.
Yeah, so I have a question. If you show output of GitHub action, this one, yeah, this one. So here you identify that only latest version, or which versions did you actually run against? I didn't understand.
Yeah, so I guess
So you run this 4 times, right? You evaluate Terraform version 0 and then 3 dots. What is exactly these 3 dots? This is what I don't see. Like,
oh yeah, I
okay,
can't pull the thing over. So
right, so
if
0,
I
0,
click
20.
on them, so it's doing a in GitHub Actions speak, it's doing a matrix. So I have 2 examples directories. I have an example /complete and an example /simple, and then I have 2 versions I'm evaluating those against. So that 2 times 2 of the matrix, that's what gives me the 4. So this first evaluation here is evaluating 0.12.26 against the complete example. This one should be against the simple, still from 26, and then these both are again the same 2 example directories, but at 0.13.5.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, and can you show the configuration for this GitHub action again, like a configuration file, a workflow YAML?
Yeah, so this is all that's needed for the action itself. If you don't have to specify the directory if you're just going to be running it from the root, but that variable is there if you want to run it from a different directory within your repository. It's going to automatically, it has it enabled to set these 2 vaults called min version, max version. But I think this is kind of where it makes the most sense to look at it. So this is the step where we run that, we output it to variables that we can use, and then this is where we're feeding it into that matrix. There's one other variable in the matrix I'm using here, and that's the 2 directories.
Cool.
If I understand, your GitHub action only check for the minimum on the minimum and the maximum, and not all the version between them, right?
Correct.
Okay, and okay, but did GitHub action really understand the semantic versioning? Like sometimes you want to exclude a particular version in Terraform, a particular version of Terraform. Like in EKS, we have a minimum version. I think we have also a maximum, but sometimes we want to ignore Terraform 13.0, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first question would be, does Terraform itself in the required version block, does it support that like negation, or that, this range but not this particular version?
Well, I think if we look at this even from user perspective, user will run Terraform with a specific version, and this will just verify whether this version fit in this required version constraint or not. So your GitHub action for min-max will look into this constraint, and it will identify that, for example, version 0.15 does not belong into this range. Then it will be excluded.
Yeah, and to show a little bit more clarity, so this is using, I mean, it's a pretty well written package. I wasn't going to try writing this myself. I mean, you can see it's used by NPM themselves. They wrote it. And so it evaluates all of these different version constraints that they have listed in this.
Well, you have to be careful with this SameVer, because this SameVer works for Node.js ecosystem, which means that inside of Ruby there is another SameVer, which is not the same as this one.
Yeah, there's no, I don't know what we'll say type of SameVer that Terraform follows, but yeah, I mean, if they have that somewhere published in one of their projects, we can look at swapping that out so that it is the true, following HashiCorp's true versioning constraints. But this was the one that I found that was the easiest to pull down, and it seemed to work for a lot of the test cases that I was using. But obviously, like, the more test cases we can throw at it, any of those kind of like edge cases, that'll show where changes and modifications we have to make.
Yeah, as Tierna mentioned, there are some exceptions in EKS, for example. So will this approach be working with EKS module as well? I mean, I'm asking Tierna because he knows internals of EKS module, and if there are any.
I think if the git-chglog action only take the minimum and the maximum one, I think it will be I don't know, because we don't define the minimum version here. We don't define the maximum version. I mean, sorry, and I don't know exactly how we can use it here right now, but maybe it can work. But
I think this is correct approach, the way how it is now. So which means that you think that it will work with upcoming versions too.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, then you will simply add comma not equal 0.15.0, for example. And then you will fix that. But yeah, I think in general that's the way how we should have it everywhere.
I think the GitHub action is a good start, but we can probably extend it to something where we can do a kind of large matrix test between a minimum and, I don't know, maximum one, but and test and validate all your code between them, and that can assure you that your Terraform code is probably working between all those versions. So I think, but because here I mean people are testing these, and we only exclude some a version when someone just tell us, hey, it's not working with this version, and we exclude it. But it may be great to have something to help us figure it out during the development cycle, and not wait for someone just to fill up a bug or an issue in GitHub.
Well, yeah. Okay, go on.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah. I mean, I didn't think of populating the whole list. So like, it'd be saying like everything from 10.3 down, because it seemed like if I was kind of thinking about like the eventual steps would be running plans and applies, and it would be a lot of that would take quite a bit of time. But I think for these early initial checks of just initializing, if I can get back to the page here, initializing, running, validate, format doesn't, only has to run on one version. It doesn't need all of them. But kind of those lighter weight, faster checks, yeah, I mean, it should be a very simple change to say, I think the December package actually gives it like all of the versions that satisfy this, it'd be getting back an array. I just have to play with that a little bit, see if we can get back that array. And obviously check for these edge cases like we have here, where we're a one-sided version constraint with exclusions, I guess, if you will.
Well, I think it's a really good start anyway. So what we can do with this right now? What do you think? Like, how can we adopt this package into existing modules?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of opening up a PR and getting it in there. I did, for kicks, open a PR against the VPC module, because I know that one is quite large and complex. But yeah, there isn't any AWS access keys required. It does use this GitHub token, which is in every workflow, so to speak. There isn't any like extra token you have to add. So it should be something where we could very quickly and easily drop it in and start seeing. The one thing I didn't add here, I ran out of time last night, is I do need to add in the pre-commit, but I think what you guys are doing over on EKS, that's why I had it up. You guys already have that, so I should be able to just copy and paste that workflow.
Well, that's something what I think we need to improve, is that if you run Terraform validate and Terraform FMT or anything like that, here it may be duplication of code which is already inside of pre-commit Terraform. If you go to okay, not in this workflow, but in another workflow which you have. Yeah, so here at the very end, or here line 47, you run Terraform validate. Well, that's not enough. Okay, if you validate one directory, maybe that's enough. But in general, all things are already described in the pre-commit Terraform config file. And the good outcome of that one is that you actually execute the whole pre-commit Terraform exactly the same way as developer should have executed before committing it. So developer should execute pre-commit run -a or not -a and update documentation, formatting, linting, and all this stuff before committing. If developer skipped this step for some reason, he can do this for multiple reasons, then this CI job should also fail. Right. So I see what you do here on line 47, and then similar with tf-lint, but I think most of this, or actually probably all of this, is already a duplication of one command, which is pre-commit run. Because pre-commit config already describe how to take care of this project. Pre-commit run has already configuration for validate, for FMT, for tf-lint, for the updating documentation, and so on.
Yeah, but one of the things that I started to look at and I couldn't verify was, so the commands that are native to the Terraform CLI, so Terraform validate, Terraform format, I don't know if those change across versions, because what I was trying to identify is when should we run something in a matrix, thinking about trying to save cycles. When should we run something in a matrix because we want to evaluate these different steps across the min and max or across the range of the versions? And when do we want to run something just once? So kind of like Terraform format, it doesn't really, in my mind, it doesn't really matter across the different versions, but I didn't know with Terraform validate, that seemed like something potentially where there's a lot of different changes to the HCL schema.
Yep.
And that would be warranted to run across, a number of versions. And then how we handle that, I don't have a good answer for. So yeah, we could wrap in the pre-commit very easily, but then it would be running that across whatever number of versions.
Yeah, and I think
specify.
And I think that's actually correct. That those things inside of pre-commit are very, how to say, simple to run, very cheap to run. So they will format something, they will validate something, and they will just return exit code with 0, 1, 2, or whatever. So the desired output from all of this is that exit code 0 or not. If it's not 0, then we fail the whole check and tell to user that, hey, this thing is bad. Go and fix it. I mean, we can, of course, be smart and somehow open pull request to ourselves and say like, hey, we did job for you and we actually fix documentation because we can, but I don't know how to do this in automated way. The thing is that pre-commit hooks also take care into account differences between versions of Terraform. So what it means is that if you would run, let's say, Terraform docs with all the version of Terraform, like it doesn't matter which one, 0.11 or 0.12, it will adjust arguments natively. And same for line 46 and 47. In recent versions, you don't have to write Terraform init. You can write Terraform init backend false to disable backend configuration, which will save you approximately a second, maybe half second. But on previous version of Terraform, this was not supported, or this was not even required. So again, we don't want to update these things conditionally and embed logic here. So that's why what I'm saying is that there is pre-commit hook already, which does all of this magic and looking into which version of tools you have, which version of Terraform docs, TF-lint you have, and then it figures out which arguments to pass into all of this. So can we, instead of doing this way, can we look into calling or installing pre-commit and calling pre-commit run and then just run it using current Terraform version?
Yeah.
So I think this way we'll, again, if for some reason module decide to, let's say, don't use TF-lint, for example, then they will apply this change inside of pre-commit. They will go and simply disable this hook for pre-commit. So then developers who are working with this module will not be required to run pre-commit hook, TF-lint pre-commit hook as well, because it's not there. And then CI will not verify it because it's not in pre-commit config YAML as well.
I didn't follow that part. I mean, I would suspect that most, I mean, unless you're a repeat contributor, I would suspect that most of the users are not using pre-commit. And that's kind of why, like, having these things like this are beneficial to give them that feedback of like, hey, the you know, you added a variable, the documentation isn't updated, the check failed. The next step behind that then is, are we going to force them down the route of updating that, or are we going to continue to do things like update the docs ourselves? And if so, then do we automate that?
Well,
in a number of different paths.
I think, one second. If we look into pre-commit config file, it already contains information about all hooks which are required. So once we have this in place in pre-commit config YAML file, then developer run git commit and it will run these hooks for them. I mean, of course, they can run git commit -n and it will skip them, but by default it will run these hooks. Then when pull request is open, we also want to make sure that CI system validate against those pull request or pre-commit config hooks. Not something what is like what we control in another place.
I get the point, but I think what Bryant is saying is like most people that are committing to the repositories are not installing pre-commit hooks.
Exactly. So that's what we don't want them to have in first place. I mean, they can have it, no problem. But CI system will execute pre-commit run, and it will give them the same output. So it will be detailed output to them, and it will tell that FMT passed, validation passed, documentation failed. And then it will be job for developers to actually fix this somehow. I mean, they will have to install these hooks, or they will have to maybe update documentation themselves. It doesn't matter for us. But then they commit it again, and we run again pre-commit hook, and then again the same checks are executed from pre-commit run. So what I'm saying is that pre-commit config YAML has already the same configuration or the same steps as line 43 and 256, for example. Because all you do here is executing Terraform validate hook and executing Terraform tflint hook. That's the same. So I propose to not duplicate behavior of pre-commit, but just call pre-commit here as well.
Okay.
If you scroll up here, so here
you would have to install pre-commit and whatever the dependencies for that are inside the GitHub action.
Yeah, I mean,
to run those things.
In Python community, this is very well. There is already set up pre-commit GitHub. What is it? GitHub.
Actually, what we are doing in Terraform AWS for, I think, for the documentation, I think. Yeah. Commit, run, and maybe only run the Terraform docs hook, and maybe we can probably extend it to another or to.
Exactly. So line 20 is doing exactly the same as pre-commit Terraform FMT. Line 20 on this file.
This is what is doing the FMT, but the 39 is doing pre-commit hook.
Yeah, pre-commit action, yes.
Yeah. And I personally, I'm in my daily work, in our CI/CD, this is what we do. And we just run pre-commit run -a and run it on every file. And
yeah, exactly.
We in that way we ensure that our pre-commit we are running the same test and with the user which are using pre-commit.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you have to extend it here, but it's also works.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Is that instead of calling some Terraform FMT, some Terraform validate, some pre-commit action here, leave only set up Python, installing Terraform docs binary, installing pre-commit and calling pre-commit. That's it. Well, I mean, you already run pre-commit run -a, and that's exactly what we run when we do large change in the infrastructure module, right? We run pre-commit run, and then it updates a lot of files in different places, and
how can this work with the matrix, which we can the Bryant GitHub actions, or how we can make it work together? Because I think there is another part which is really great, is the test this with, I mean, even the validation, or do the validation on the Terraform, the minimum Terraform version and the maximum one I think it's a good thing. And
well, I think it's quite straightforward. As Brian just said, is that this GitHub action which he created is telling you which version to have. Then you install this version, and then you continue running pre-commit run with this version. So you have metrics and pre-commit run as an action.
Okay.
So which is, I don't think it's a big problem, because it's going to be not sharing anything anyway, right? So each matrix step is executed in separate container anyway.
Yep.
So this means we can have any number of parallel things in matrix. Currently we have 2. I think 2 is enough for us. So then
maybe we can start something with the Terraform VPC module, or something else, or I don't know.
Yeah, sure. I think it doesn't matter where to start, honestly. They're all very similar except EKS. So, but did we agree to run matrix and then install correct version of Terraform and run pre-commit action as here on line 37, and with the same arguments, but just skip Terraform docs here on line 39, that we can run just all?
Yeah, so I'll update, or I'll get an example or sample workflow with not doing the individual commands, but running it with pre-commit across the matrix. And then the other change that I'll look at incorporating is having the ability to kind of set a flag and a different output, to where you still can get the min-max, but then also if you want to get, we'll call it like range, you'll have that like array of valid versions. So if you wanted to check 1226, 1227, 1228, not 1229, something like that. So if you do want to do kind of more exhaustive checks to be able to get that range, and then obviously coming up with some different like patterns that fit and work, like the version constraint patterns that work for Terraform, because again, they're probably following their own pattern for versioning, and getting some tests against those, so that we know that the action is excluding the ones we want to exclude. It's only grabbing the versions that we want to grab, and it's working for the cases that we want it to.
Yeah. Cool. Then I think we can conclude this one. And there is thanks a lot, Brian, for showing and for working on this. It's really a must-have for what we do. Well, there was one question from a guy from Ameya, and I think he left the Zoom already. But his question was how to do Terraform testing in Terraform. And then 20 minutes later, he asked, what is pre-commit run? Well, pre-commit is definitely not well known in Terraform ecosystem. I mean, people know about it, but people don't take it seriously. I don't know why, really. I mean, it doesn't have too much downside to my mind. It works well most of the times, at least as a user. When I try to debug something, then it's very complicated, but using it is quite straightforward, I think. So yeah, and what about you guys? Do you use pre-commit, or do you install pre-commit yourself when you work on these modules or on other projects?
Yeah, I have it installed. I have seen a few caveats. I use an Ubuntu machine for most of my day-to-day work, but then I have a MacBook. I've seen better results with the pre-commit on Mac OS. And so typically what I do, and that's usually around the docs, the Terraform docs hook. But I'll if I make changes on the a Linux, different Linux flavor, I'll push it up and then pull it down on my MacBook and just rerun it again to make sure that everything looks correct. So I don't know. I haven't really spent time tracking that one down, but yeah, I have it installed on all the machines I use.
Cool. It's one of my to do task in my upcoming interviews is that I want to bring Anthony, who is creator of Precommit, to talk to all of us live, because we probably have some questions to him. Like overall, he's very active Python developer and very well known in Python community. So yeah, it was pretty interesting for me to discover that he also used Terraform and Python and author of Precommit. So it's good combination. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. We have spent a lot of time on this one, but I think it's really great that you made these things. So let's agree that we take this further to VPC or SQS. I would prefer to take something smaller than VPC personally, because IAM is used so many times in automation that this week I made a mistake and I push it and release new version, and then one guy opened an issue, I think in half an hour or so, and said that, oh no, I broke all of his infrastructure because he didn't pin version. Well, that's what beta testing is for, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the next thing, is what to do with git-chglog. And I think Tierno was raising this, and release drafter looks promising. That's all what I have in notes. Do you have anything to add, Tierno, or anyone else?
Not really, because I think the GitHub Actions is the git-chglog is working, but there is no more feature and no more bug fix on it, and I was just asking a question: what should we consider using this, or should we consider replacing it? But I don't know another tool because I don't use them a lot. Maybe you guys have something to say about that.
Well, we mentioned release drafter when we discussed this earlier. So release drafter is one of these things which we can utilize. I have actually a question to everyone related to workflow and the way how why I use GitHub changelog, why I introduced git changelog in first place, is because I release from command line. So it's sequence of different shell script or different utilities which I run. Then it asks me like, are you sure that you want to release this, and it will be this, and it shows me which version is going to be released. So I just copy paste this into commands. So there I use git changelog. It's very easy for me to put it in automation, and it's like literally a no-brainer for me. But if we use something like release drafter, it means that we will have to spend some time to review these release nodes to make them interesting. Maybe I don't know, put some emojis there because that's what release nodes are for, right? To store your emojis. So if we don't have immediate need to replace git-chglog, it's really convenient for me to run it. And well, I know that there are a few things missing in that tool. Does anyone want to jump in and say that, hey, I will work on, I don't know, replacement of git-chglog and use some other tool or some other flow?
I won't say that I'm going to volunteer, but something that I've been changing on the way that I do things with clients is one of the things that I've shied away from or that's come up is having the markdown changelog in the repo, because you then now have a lot of commits that are for like these changelogs, especially if we look at the workflow for like the modules. You know, each kind of pull request is then has an associated release with it, and so you get a lot of these. It's almost like a one for one. If you have a commit for a new feature, then you have a follow-on commit of like update changelog. And one of the things that I started doing was for like Terraform stuff specifically is I didn't want to have to even worry about it. If I follow the convention of semantic commits, there's a lot of tools. Again, they're more JavaScript based that will automatically look at, you know, if it's a feature, you know, that's a version bump. If it's a fix, you know, that's a patch bump. If you put, you know, something in there about breaking or whatever, that's a major version bump. And so it handles the logic in it. And so I started using, there's a tool called NPX, which is interesting because I don't have to download and have like a package.json for any of the files, and I can run it in a GitHub action workflow. So I just do like npx semantic release, and there's a configuration file to say what plugins I wanted to use. And so now I have a workflow that on push to master, so if I create a change or something, it triggers that workflow. It evaluates whether it should create a new release. There is no changelog stored in the repository, so I don't have to do any committing back to the repository to update it. And it's just storing the changelog right into the release section of GitHub. I found that to be kind of, it removes a lot of the friction around if others have pull requests open, they don't have to like update for, you know, changelog changes. I don't have a good one for like the Terraform docs. That's still something that seems to come up a lot, but yeah, it seemed to take a lot of the stuff away from where it's just like every time I commit into the repository, even if I do a change in the documentation, there is no release because it hasn't modified the code base in any way. I found it to work pretty well. No emojis though.
Yeah. Well, I saw this flow working many times myself, and I think it's really interesting to see how it's done. But from the user perspective, I'm missing a possibility to search in changes. So if there are release notes, and let's say only 10 recent releases are shown, then I cannot find which version this resource or this feature was added. In changelog, I can always search. This is something what I couldn't figure out how to do. Like maybe I can search in GitHub, search myself, but there is no easy way to see beyond recent 10 releases.
Yeah.
So that's something. But yeah, I propose to come back to the discussion of release train and how we do this slightly later, because right now it just I mean we understand that it's important to improve it, but I honestly don't have any possibility to work on this myself. Like if anyone wants to volunteer, you're welcome. But I don't have possibility to work on this myself. So then we postpone this one for now, and git changelog is still with us for some time, even if Tierna opens a bug there and nobody takes care of his bug. Well, that's how open source work, right? Yes. Okay. So So then another thing which we have is related to features Terraform 0.13 now, and 14 is coming in 22 days. So what do we need to do with 0.13 features? Like the main question is if we start using Terraform 0.13 features right away in master branch of modules, whether we should be thinking about backward compatibility for people who are still on 0.12, and if so, for how long we should think about them. Or what's your take on Terraform 0.13? Feel free to unmute yourself. And by the way, there are a few people joined us, so feel free to unmute yourself if you have anything to say about this. We have 7 people here now. So, anyone? No one. Sounds like no one. Well, no, it sounds like Bryant wants to say something, but Bryant is muted.
No, I don't. It's very hard. I mean, the way that Terraform is, I don't know if what's coming in 0.14 with the ability to have a versioned lock file, if that offers any reprieve. I don't think.
No, not for us. Not for us as module developers. No.
No.
It's only for
I mean,
consumers of our modules. So they can pin something, and again, it will be pinning of providers only. It's not gonna to do anything with modules version.
So I mean, we don't have any dynamic way of like feature flagging to say, like, wrap some set of configuration to say if this version is, satisfies a constraint, use it, otherwise don't. We don't have that ability in Terraform. So the only way that I've seen it to support multiple versions, and I think we've done it here, is you basically kick out another branch, and then you're trying to maintain multiple branches, and that gets kind of scary because 0.12 is still very much heavily in use. 0.13 is coming up in use, and now there's 0.14, and then HashiCorp is talking about when 1.0 is going to get released, and so it's a little bit daunting to say we're going to support all these versions, because then it's 3-4 long-lived branches. How do you keep them in sync? Who gets the patches? I don't have a good answer for that.
Anyone else?
I think we can proceed probably by elimination, by starting already for the 0.11. Should we stop maintaining that branch? I think we all agree that it's yes. So that point is already okay. Okay, we should stop that. And the other one is, should we start, is there any cool feature in 0.13 that we have to use right now in our models? I don't know if we can answer to that question generally, because I think it depends on your module, on how you can write it, and what feature you want. And I mean, in the EKS module, because this is what I know, what this is the module I know really well, is we attempted some days ago to reward all of the module and try to put it in the submodules and use the Terraform 13 loop model to loop through your submodel to spin up a worker node or management group or even target profile. That separation is quite interesting, but when I take a step back, I think for that particular use case, we can still rely on the working one today, and still use the loop through the dictionary, the map inside the module, and not because I think that feature is not really important to us to continue to maintain our EKS module. So I mean, for that particular case, I don't see if we have really to move directly to 0.13. For the rest of the other modules, I think we can, all the features of Terraform 0.13, we have even in Terraform 0.12, we have some I mean, I don't know how I can say it, but we can do it another way. So it maybe not maybe the correct one, the short one, but the short way, but it's we can achieve the same result, and I mean, we can still stay with Terraform 0.12 and not include right now, at least right now, immediately, the Terraform 13 feature, because we will drop all users, because as you mentioned earlier, that there is still a lot of users which rely on Terraform 0.12. So is my point.
I think I think it's common sense that we cannot drop everything what we had and rewrite it completely. But if we look into the state how these modules are right now, I mean, module contains, like all modules, contains features like 99% of features which we have, right? We don't have any long list of features which we currently miss. I mean, of course, we can add them continuously, but there are users who are happy with this way how this module is working. So there is no continuous development of these modules anymore, right? I mean, it's like refactoring or maybe improvements here and there, but overall the condition is rather stable on all of modules. So what we have to look into, yes, please mute while clicking. Okay, I will take mouse in my left hand and see if it works. So what I'm trying to say is that the condition of modules is rather stable overall. So the reason why we need to do anything about version is just to improve quality of the modules itself. It's like maybe reduce, like in security group module, for example, if there would be a way to use latest version, then amount of code will reduce approximately 3 or maybe 4 times. Because it is possible to use for each and a few other magic things. So I really want to delete 70% of code. And that's exactly the point of 0.12 actually.
Yeah.
So talking about this feature is one improvement. But another feature which is related to using better version is, for example, 0.13 has try and can functions. So these functions, to my opinion, can be used rather effectively to make some hacks more elegant. I don't know exactly like in which place right now, but from my experience, when I use try and can in another project, I have a little bit better quality of the code. Not significantly better, but it's just good feature to have, and yeah, why not to use it if possible. So we also agree that 0.12 and 0.13 there is no clear winner right now. Like some people still use 0.12, some people use 0.13. But what if we do something like this? Let's say from 1st of January, just thinking loud, we will start using 0.13 features like completely free. Like if we want to use a 0.13 feature, then we will use it. And if somebody, let's say, has something not working, but they still use version 0.12, then we cannot support them. Because we don't have this responsibility to support ancient versions at all. And dropping 0.11 is definitely a way to do, to my mind. But adding new features and start relying on them and increasing increasing new like minimum version required is also a good practice to my mind. Because let's say from 1st of January there will be no new things which we want to add to these modules, like which we couldn't live without them.
What if, I mean, I like the idea of like saying a date, we're gonna start doing X, but what if we do it based off of the major release? So like 0.14 is gonna be released. We won't start incorporating 0.14 features in the modules until 6 months after the release, or a year after the
6
release.
months was something what I was mentioning and actually was following quite happily with 0.12. Yes.
I think it's a good point, because I mean we can even follow the Terraform life cycle, and I mean we can say that you can, I mean like in every software we have, when you have even, you support two versions, the latest one and the old one. But I mean when I can try to compute it in English, and when you have even when you have Terraform 14 released, you can say that hey, Terraform 14 is released. We have, I think everyone should move to Terraform 13 and start using 0.14. We are not making any change on the Terraform 12 codes anymore. I mean, you only support two versions of Terraform. I mean, I don't know which.
Well, but that's the problem. We, like, at least I don't want to support more than one version, honestly. So it's a lot of work to even think about. So there is a comment from Dmitro. By the way, Dmitro, feel free to unmute yourself and mention. So he said that difference in releases between 0.12 and 13 was approximately 1 year. Maybe it makes sense to have 3 months instead of 6 months. Sorry, my son is crying. Okay, then have fun with your son. And so what I was saying is that having two versions is already challenging. Like having what we have right now, 0.12 and 0.11. For example, every time when I have to do, not now, but a few months ago, when I used to review something for 0.11, I used to do a lot of manual steps, like installing 0.11 locally, running it, committing to correct branch, and then there is one change log file which is being updated, and that's also bad. Like there is a conflict of which version I can push. Also, it's rather hard to tell in semantic version that increase not latest version to major, but increase previous version. So it's like version 1 and version 2, and now let's work on version 1. It's just too much work overall. It's not even related to Terraform. It's more like kids' problems, which I didn't solve in timely manner. But can we, let's say, do our best to put as much attention to 0.12 and let's say put all features which are like laying around, and let's say from 1st of January say that, okay guys, from now on there will be support only for 0.13, because 1st of January there will be already discussion about 0.15. So, and there are not many things which we may have from 0.13. It's primarily two things: try and can, and depends between modules.
I mean, it's right now we are just saying from January, but I think we have to think about a really clear communication that we can mention everywhere, and say that we have to say, yeah, 6 months, yeah, that's when it's really clear, and it's we wrote it on either on the head of the module side. I don't know where we can write it, but it's really clear. But I mean for the I think we have to define that time we have to define that, and we have to ensure that everyone know it. And if you want to go further, you have to accept it or start using something else maybe.
Well, it reminds me like telling to people that they should upgrade from Terraform 0.11. You know, I still have people around me who say like, oh, we cannot update from 0.11.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't matter what you tell to them. They know that they should update. But I don't think they will really take this into account. Again, the module like EKS is already in very good condition. It has lots of users when it was 0.11, 0.12, 0.13. So if somebody will need new features, they will have to fork it and maintain it for any amount of time.
It's 1619.
Yeah, and to be clear, I mean, we're only kind of, by doing this change of saying 6 months after a new major release by Terraform, we'll start introducing features for that version. We're really only limiting the oldest version.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the way that, like, when 13 came out, we bumped the version pin, and it's like, we're not using version 13 features in the module, so we're not telling anyone you have to use 13 or you have to use 12. We're allowing them to use anything forward, if you will. But we're just basically saying, or fixing the problem we have with like version 11. You can use the module up until the point when version 11 was dropped. It's then on to you if you want to use the newest features or the latest features. You have to upgrade on your end. But we're going to say that X amount of time after a major release, we will have a grace period before we introduce a change that is in theory breaking. And that's not to say that at that 6 month mark, we're going to actually physically introduce. It's just saying that for 6 months, we won't introduce anything that is going to break the oldest version that we're supporting. So when 14 comes out, there'll be a 6 month period where we're not going to even entertain any changes for, I guess, 0.13 or however many versions we're going back. But then, after that 6 month period, then we introduce 0.13 changes, 0.14 changes, and then 13 is no longer released. So it's just kind of like setting that look behind cleanup, that there's a grace period. And then after that point, if there is a pull request or a need for something in that latest feature, that's when we'll start introducing them. It'll be a major version upgrade, and we won't be supporting the prior versions.
So which date do we think about when we can start using Terraform 0.13 features, but only if we need them? It doesn't mean that we'll suddenly add unnecessary try and can and whatever else just because we can do. Well, we survive without them, right? And I believe that we can survive without them for a very long time until Terra Grant is merged into Terraform.
Wait, is that happening?
No. It's just
Okay.
it's my
Okay, cool.
it's in my dreams. Whew. Yeah. No, but 1st of January, yeah. Read down. You want to say something? No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello.
So, hello all. So, Redwan, I'm a DevOps engineer working at Paris. So, I have one question. I see that in Terraform 0.13 there is a new feature that Kubernetes, we can use Kubernetes as a remote state. So I wonder what are the benefits, what are the advantage using Kubernetes as a remote state instead of, for example, you use S3 bucket. So and I wonder if it will be the future solution to use a remote state as in Kubernetes.
Well, I think you're asking good question for discuss.hashicorp.com, but not for us, because we while we all may have different opinions and we can answer this question, but this question is not related to Terraform AWS modules, which we are discussing today. So I really recommend you to go to discuss.hashicorp.com and ask these questions. Unless you guys, Max and Tierna or anyone else, have something to say about this feature.
I think Kubernetes is unlikely to become the default state store because the Kubernetes cluster is quite expensive to set up, and money and time and everything, as whereas an S3 bucket is really, really cheap and simple. That would probably be my assumption.
And on the other hand, you need to spin up Kubernetes cluster first with Terraform and store its state somewhere.
That sounds like a cool feature. I'd be interested to know how that works. Like, is it storing it in a config map or something else? Yeah, they're storing it in a secret. I mean, but you can store it in config map if you want. But I think by default it's stored in secret. Interesting. I personally, I don't know if I will use it because, as you say, Max, there is a lot of backends out there which is really simple and cheap to use, and that is probably a use case, but I don't know what, but I don't know which one, but maybe someone else has something to say. But
actually, if we have now, it's great moment that you guys are maintainers of EKS modules here. There were a lot of people asking about EKS, and I think I told them that one day I really want to focus on EKS discussion, and let's say 2 of you plus many other Terraform EKS module users will join, and we can talk about that specifically. So I hope you don't mind to share your knowledge with users of the module which you guys maintain. But meanwhile, let's finalize our today's discussion, which is about Terraform 0.13 and what is a grace period. So before Bryant disappeared, we were talking about when we can start using Terraform 0.13 features. If we mention, let's say, 1st of, I don't know, December or January, which one is best for you? Like, do you currently have need in any of 0.13 features?
Not really. We can use it, right?
We can use even 14 if we want.
Yeah, but I don't know if if you will go through that big change and move things around right now, because I personally don't have a lot of time to manage that right now, and I don't know how. If probably we'll see if someone try to introduce a new a cool feature using that Terraform that 13, but I mean right now I don't know.
Right. Okay, then let's keep it. Anyway, at some point we'll have to use 0.14, 0.15, 1.0. So I think it's a good strategy that we start or we are allowed to use new feature, let's say half year after release. Okay, so half year I think it's a good time. We can go at shorter, like 3 months, as Dmitro mentioned.
And what about the cleaning side? I mean, what is the life cycle of you are maintaining something? I mean, during the okay, you already answered the question. I was trying to think about it. And if you introduce a new feature every 6 months, I mean, in 6 month period, you can introduce a new feature from a newest release. That means that you are dropping the old one.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, dropping the very old one, which is currently 0.11, right?
Not even. I mean, if
0.12.
Yeah.
Right. So let's say from 1st of January or approximately, we don't have to respond to issues about Terraform 0.12. Is this right? I mean, that's my dream and my imagination, but that's why I'm asking it. I really don't want to think about 0.12 being a constraint, because if I find something interesting and then I have to think, oh no, this is not yet available. Well, we define what is available, what is not available.
Max?
I don't know. I don't have a massive opinion on this, to be honest. Like, I haven't done much support of the EKS module for a while now.
Okay, so let me simplify your thinking, Max. So what about dropping 0.11 support from today?
100%. Should have been dropped ages ago.
Excellent. So what if we drop support for 0.12 from, I don't know, 1st of January?
I also think that's fine. Like I said in the GitHub comment issue thing and the triage thing, like, I think it's fair to skew towards supporting versions with better features to clean up the code sooner and sacrifice old versions quicker, at least for the sake of maintenance, because it makes maintenance easier and less complicated and stuff. And so I personally lean more towards in that direction, just to make life easier for maintainers, even if it means forcing users to upgrade or fork the module.
And I think that, again, even if people will need to do some changes related to 0.12, they can always fork it, and they can always add this functionality themselves, right? I mean, 0.12 is already more than a year old, so they should be able to do this. Well, it's actually almost 2 years old now. So, okay, good. So then drop 0.11 from today, drop 0.12 from 1st of January, and grace period, or when we can introduce 0.13 changes, is 6 months after release, which is going to be, well, it's actually already, because 0.13 features will, 0.13 was released a long time ago anyway, so we can use 0.13 even from today. Okay?
Yeah, but then 12 is not dropped really technically until you add a 13 feature, right? So in theory, 0.12 could be supported for any amount of time until the 0.13 feature.
Exactly, yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So for this, if we don't add any new features for any amount of time, it will be forward compatible for a very long time. Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah. Okay, so then we use 0.13 features, let's say, from any time, because 6 months period already passed, and 0.14 we will add during 6 months after release, which is, let's say, 1st of December plus what is it? So 1st of May approximately will be half year after 0.14 release, so we can add 0.14 features after 1st of May. Cool. And 0.15 anyway will just be clean up before 1.0, so it should be fine. Okay, I think we took more time than actually was planned. I apologize for the quality because I know that, believe me, it's computers. They never work as expected. So yeah, now I see you guys in 4 views on my screen instead of 1. And yeah, that's how it is. So yeah, there were some things related to Q&A. In particular, it was related to EKS module. Well, I don't remember what was it. We had some discussion in some pull request, I think with Tierna, and where we say like, oh, let's talk about this on Friday. But I don't see this myself right now, so I don't know what we talked about. Anyway, we can talk about that next time if there is no urgent need. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I was in mute. And I think it was about how to introduce the map, how to use map for worker groups, and what we're discussing in that issue, and it's a long standing issue started by Max. He was saying that the module is getting too complex, and how we can stop exploiting that complexity, and we started to think about it, and we decided in that issue to split the giant module into the small submodules, and we already done it for managing that group, and I have an open PR for the Fargate, but the last one will bring a lot of breaking changes. It's about moving from list to map for worker groups. So the question was how we can do that easily and without breaking a lot of eggs. And breaking all of production and infrastructure. I don't have a right answer for that.
Well, overall, I think it's not related just to EKS module, but it's quite easy. I think we talk about it on VPC module.
VPC also. Yes.
Yeah. So the thing is that when we can specify that variable type is any, for example, then inside of the code we can use try function and try different operations on that. Not try and can, they are rather similar in this case. So what we can do is that we can try to convert from list into map of specific structure, and if it is not successful, then we use map as is. So can is the way how we can do this. I can try to write this code because I know that it's probably easier to see the code and understand what I'm talking about. So yeah, that's the only
You're saying
way.
this would support both options? Is that what you're saying? With just try can?
Sorry? It will support both options transparently for the user.
Okay.
So at least that's the idea which I have when I specify that I expect any value from the user, and then I need to process this value somehow using Terraform. Then I can use try and can. In where was it? In Lambda module, I use Python inside. So with Python is significantly easier for me. So I pass the whole value as encoded structure into Python script, and then my Python decide whether it is map or list or whatever I want to do, because Python is much more powerful language than Terraform. But here we cannot use Python, of course. So that's why we need to come up with some similar behavior using 0.13 features.
Yeah, but maybe this is another example where we just like go ahead, don't support previous users or don't try and be backwards compatible, because the code around worker groups is so complicated in Terraform. I have a feeling that if you're trying to make this backwards compatible, it's just going to make a big mess.
Well, to my mind, this is one of the easiest thing to think about backward compatibility. If it is implemented the way I'm thinking about it, then we don't have to think about this so many times. But if what I'm thinking is not going to work for some limitations which I don't know yet, then yes, we will have to come up with a very big release and tell users that everything what they had before in VPC version 2 will have to be updated like this. But actually it's related to the scope of it. Let's say if we're talking about release, if we're talking about dropping backward compatibility for some reason like this one, maybe that's a good time to actually look into existing resources and existing solutions and clean up them as well. But this requires a lot of work to do. It's just impossible for me to even predict about how many hours it will take to do. So list and maps for subnet types is doable to my mind. But again, let me demonstrate what I think for the next meeting which we have, and then we'll see.
You can write some code and just share it.
Of course.
Before that meeting.
The thing is that I'm simply busy with other things, so that's why it's easier for me to say that let's talk about this next time. But of course, I need to. I will write this code before the meeting. What about this meeting which we have today, and how soon do you want to talk about next things? Because for the next time, I think it's gonna to be, or at least I hope and I promise, it will be better organized from my side. Because now it's just not very efficient, and I want us to talk more about this linting GitHub action which Bryant is doing. Hopefully he will finish large part of it, and we can see it working some point in some repositories. And there will be some questions from users, because this time there were very few questions. That's how it is. So is it okay if we talk, let's say, in a month? Yeah, cool. Then I will simply propose propose a date, and that's it. Cool. Okay.
Cool.
So
Nice
then,
to see you guys.
yeah, thanks a lot for joining and for finding time.
Bye.
Yeah,
Bye bye.
thanks. Bye.